This idea that's been put about, that there was anything there that was remotely related to locking in, that is garbage. Utter garbage. I'm sorry, if this was Russia, I would call it disinformation.
Tom has called from Brighton. What would you like to say?
Well, hello, thank you for taking my call. You'll hear my voice is, probably hears my voice is rather hoarse from all the chanting I did this morning in Trafalgar Square. I'm a member of a Republic. Excuse me. Republic is a very small organisation, entirely peaceful and democrat. It's devoted to democracy, so it uses peaceful democratic means. Yeah. I say it's a small organisation. Therefore, I, as an ordinary member of it, just doing my bit, in where I live, I was assigned the job this morning of overseeing the distribution of those placards which were, I thought about it before calling in, which were stolen by the police. I should have been at that van, in fact, but I hadn't yet heard. I arrived there before 7 o'clock this morning, and I should have been there at the van to help unpack, take the van, the placards out and so on. Now, I'd like to make 2 points, if I may. First of all, this idea that's been put about, that there was anything there that was remotely related to locking in, that is garbage. Utter garbage. I'm sorry, if this was Russia, I would call it disinformation.
Okay.
That is not what Republic does. This protest had been negotiated, discussed by Graham Smith, our chief executive, who was arrested this morning. He had led negotiations with the Metropolitan Police for 6 months in advance, and everything was agreed about how we would do it, what would be done, including the placards, as you said earlier, and also to have perhaps music and speeches. MPs were invited. We had a sound system which was also arrested. You don't often hear of sound systems being arrested, but it was.
Wow.
Now, that was done surreptitiously while everything was going on. My second point is there are lots and lots, naturally, of foreign journalists there, and naturally they were doing their job as journalists, and they were interviewing us in the crowd, asking us why we were there and what we thought about things. Now, the basic explanation that I gave, and this is very important to understand what a kind of occasion this was, that was a political event.
Yep.
The king is the head of state of this country. That is the most senior political position in the country. Our objection to it is entirely on the grounds of democracy. So to attack us in this undemocratic way, that is, as you say, extremely worrying. Our argument is quite simply the head of state, position of head of state, like other positions in what calls itself, what has the arrogance to describe itself as the mother of democracies, and look what happened this morning, that job should be elected. Like we elect our MPs, on Thursday we elected our local councillors and so on. That is what that, and obviously we're only going to use democratic means to argue that case. That's it. Now, this ceremony today, this archaic medieval ceremony, which exists nowhere else in the world, that was the equivalent in this country of the investiture of the President of the United States. Now imagine, in the United States, of course, they have their First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech. So supposing in 2017, at the investiture of Donald Trump, people would come along protesting against him. Now, we weren't protesting against the king as such, not him individually.
Right.
Our argument is about the procedure, the institution, the idea that this job should be held by members of only one family because they have held it for centuries and centuries in the past. That this man should have been given that job because his mother had it for 70 years before him and before her father, and so on, back into the mists of time. How can you have a system like that in what's called a democracy? Now, this was this Coronation College and investiture. It was when a ceremony. A political ceremony. And we wanted to say, we don't think this is right because this is not a democratic institution and we believe in democracy. That's why we were there. with our wanting to show our placards. Fortunately, very many of the people who were there in the crowd had brought their own placards instead. And what we did instead of instead of having our speeches, there was at least one MP who was invited to give a speech and expected to do so. That had been approved by the police. Instead, we just had our voices. So we heard, fortunately, there was a very conveniently placed loudspeaker where we heard the coronation service going on, which gave us very good prompts to come with our chants and our boos and so on. And then when we saw, coming through Admiralty Arch or up Whitehall, we saw these people in these soldiers in their funny brass hats and what have you. That also, of course, made us want to react. And, that's what we were there for. Nothing more than that. We were there to express our opinion about what we saw in front of us and what we heard through that loudspeaker. As simple as that. We were prevented from doing so in the way that we had chosen and which had been agreed with the police.
Tom, you have, by anybody's measure, had a hell of a day. And so I can't thank you enough for picking up the phone and sharing your on-the-ground first-hand experience with us. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you very much for listening and giving me the opportunity, because I think it's very important, if I may simply finish quickly. It is very important, obviously, that people in this country should understand what was happening on the ground from people who are taking part and not listen to this disinformation that's been put about, and also have a thought. And I spoke to journalists from Finland, from Ireland, from the United States, someone from Vanity Fair, from France, and I think one or two other countries. This has gone all around the world. Yeah. And I'm sorry, this country has already, over the last 7 years, since that ludicrous referendum that we had about pulling ourselves out of the EU and the behaviour of our government since then, this country has acquired a dreadful reputation internationally. And this will only make it far, far worse. What that government thought it was out there, working on Whitehall, what it thought it was doing, it's achieved. Sorry, I'm going on a bit, but you will remember Steve Barclay taking the RCN to court, which was guaranteed to strengthen the opinion of the members of RCN in a second strike ballot. Yes. Stupidest thing he could possibly have done. Well, this has given the biggest possible momentum to the movement to get rid of our monarchy that it could possibly have done. The government prompting the police to take these absolutely insane actions against us.